Hey, folks, welcome to the DarkHorse podcast live stream 108, take 4. This is the 8 o'clock class edition, and we are experiencing...
Literally, it's too early for all of us.
It's too early for all of us,
Yes.
right? This is not a civilized hour here on the West Coast. I guess it's even worse if you're in Hawaii, unless you're up since last night. But nonetheless, we are going to try this. And as I was explaining before, the massive technical hiccup that accompanied apparently a deepening of our voices, I don't know what all, but we have power fluctuations today because it is in the Pacific Northwest. It's December. And what happens when those two things come together here is that the trees wobble and they get drenched and they fall on power lines and everything goes kaput. And we've seen our power fluctuate multiple times this morning. And I think it has messed with every system that is dependent on constant power.
Indeed. Well, we're going to do what we can do here. We're going to do a little fast and furious here this morning. We have places to be that aren't here, which is why we're coming to you early. So, without further ado, we're going to talk about some books. We're going to talk a little bit about Omicron, various things today, and we'll then, as usual, take a break and then come back for a concentrated Q&A, maybe 45 minutes. But first, let's do logistics, shall we? A Hunter-Gatherer's Guide to the 21st Century continues to sell well. We appreciate your enthusiasm for it. We continue to hear really great things about it. We continue to be on other people's podcasts talking about it, the most recent one being Forward with Andrew Yang. This is a great conversation. I really enjoyed this.
Me too.
So hopefully I'll remember to put the link to that in our show notes as well. But we encourage you to go find that. Starts out a little meandering and slow, but I think we really get into some important issues.
But Andrew is so darn likable and diverse and interesting, and it's crazy. I see a guy like that, and I think, wouldn't it be cool if he ran for office?
Yeah, wouldn't it?
Wouldn't it? Wouldn't that be great if we just elected people? I don't know why that doesn't happen. Maybe we'll talk to him about it.
Maybe, yeah, that would be awesome. Okay, as we announced last week, there is a bookstore on Orcas Island, Darville's Bookshop, which can be found right here. Actually, show my screen just briefly, Zachary. Darville's Bookstore.indie light, I think it is, .org. You can go there and order a signed copy of our book if you are so interested, if I may, Zachary. And that link will also be in the show notes. And
presumably, you could also go pick one up in person.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, not until I think Sunday afternoon is the soonest there will be any in person, though. If you're watching on YouTube, we are also, of course, streaming to Odyssey, where the live chat is happening. You can ask questions for the Q&A that will happen immediately after here at darkhorsesubmissions.com. We have Patreons, which we have told you about often. And right now, the question asking period is open on my Patreon for the private Q&A that we will be doing a week early this month. So rather than on Boxing Day on December 26th, we'll be doing it on December 19th. And indeed, we may be taking a couple of weeks break from DarkHorse. We will not be streaming on Christmas or on New Year's Day, but we may add an episode in there, one or two plations. And
we being addicts, apparently, unlikely addicts of the form.
Yeah, I don't think that's what's driving it. No. We appreciate how many people we hear from who really are finding value in what we're doing, and that in turn helps us know that we are doing things of value in the world.
We are honored to be your reality check, and we apologize for the reality.
Yes, about which we are doing everything we can. We have a variety of products that have been up for a couple of weeks at the store.darkhorsepodcast.org. Direwolves, Saddle Up the Direwolves, We Ride Tonight, Epic Tabby, Digital Book Burning, variety of other things. And our wonderful artist, David Eldred, you may put up my screen here for a moment, Zachary, has a website now where he has some of his work, and you can contact him if you are interested. You will find some familiar artwork here right on this site, including he also did the artwork for our book website. So he's terrific and just a joy to work with, and we encourage you to go look him up.
Yeah, he's got such an incredible, what's the visual equivalent of voice.
Yeah.
That
very much so.
its style does not seem up to the challenge of describing it, but it's so beautiful.
Yeah, it really is. And on natural selections this week, my Substack, I co-wrote this time with our friend and longtime collaborator and former student Drew Schneidler a piece on gifting traditions in spiders, in octopus, in Iran, in the Kung, in the modern world. I feel like I have to do that, even though it feels ridiculous.
Yeah, you faked that very well. That was
yeah. And so that was really actually a joy to write. So I encourage everyone to go there. And we have 3 ads this week. So
all right.
Without further ado, 3 ads for you this week. The first is Moink. Moink. That's like a portmanteau of moo and oik. Our first sponsor this week is Moink. They deliver grass-fed and grass-finished beef and lamb, pastured pork and chicken, and wild-caught Alaskan salmon and turkey direct to your door. Just 4 companies control 80% of the U.S. meat industry, and Moink is helping family farms become financially independent outside of big agriculture. I love this company. I really do. Moink sent us a turkey for Thanksgiving. So since we came to you last, we have actually had their turkey as well. And seriously, guys, so good.
Yeah, it was completely off the hook. I must say, I'm a huge fan of turkey.
Yeah. So are we all.
Really good.
Here at Weinstein Hying household, we all really do love turkey, and this is just terrific. And before that, when we came to you the first time, we had already had steaks and bacon and chicken and lamb from them. We haven't tried all of the stuff they sent us in that first box, but everything we have tried is out of this world. So good. I particularly love the ribeye steak, and their sausages were terrific too. Moink's animals are raised outdoors, their fish swim wild in the ocean, and Moink meat is free of antibiotics, hormones, sugar, and all the other junk you find prepackaged in so much that's what is in the meat aisle. I love everything about this company. The fact that the meat is grass-fed, finished on small farms, the lovely publications that come with it. This reminds me, this is one of them. This reminds me of what Gourmet magazine was back in the day, before it started to change and then went belly up or got bought, or I don't remember exactly what happened, but it's gone now. And of course, the meat itself. Moink was founded by an 8th-generation farmer, which I also love. Support Moink, support family farming. So join the Moink movement today. Go to moinkbox.com/darkhorse right now to get a year of ground beef for free. I always wonder with things like that, though, how they estimate how much ground beef you eat. I don't know. You get a year of ground beef for free if you go to moinkbox.com/darkhorse. Then pick what meats you want delivered with your first box, change what you get each month, and cancel anytime. That's 1 year of the best ground beef you'll ever taste, but for a limited time. Spelled MOINK box.com/darkhorse. I read that badly. MOINK box.com/darkhorse. That's moinkbox.com/darkhorse.
All right. Well, we're going to switch gears a little bit. It's Vivo Barefoot. Now, most shoes are not made for your feet, but here's the thing nobody ever says. They're not made for anybody's feet, right? They're just made to get you from here to there, and it's not what you want. It really messes with your ability to locomote. They are made for someone else's idea of what feet should look like and do, and be constrained by. And usually that someone doesn't actually know feet or what they can do. Vivo Barefoot, in contrast, knows feet. Vivo Barefoot isn't driven by fashion. You can tell because the shoes aren't really that usual looking. But oh man, are these shoes a revelation. We both think so. We've both been wearing them all over the place. We love these shoes. They are beyond comfortable. The tactile feedback from the surfaces you are walking on is amazing. And they cause you no pain at all because there's no pressure points forcing your feet into odd positions. They're fantastic. Your feet are the product of millions of years of evolution. Humans evolved to walk, move, and run barefoot, but modern shoes that are overly cushioned and strangely shaped have negatively impacted foot function and are contributing to health crises, one in which people move less than they might, in part because their shoes make their feet hurt. Vivo Barefoot shoes are designed wide to provide natural stability, thin to enable you to feel more, and flexible to help you build your natural strength from the ground up. Foot strength increases by 60% in a matter of months just by walking around in them. We both keep running into people out in the world who comment on the Vivo Barefoot shoes that we are wearing. They are wearing them too often. It is an odd little club, but growing. Once people start wearing these shoes, they don't seem to stop. Go to vivobarefoot.com/darkhorse to get an exclusive offer of 20% off. Additionally, all new customers get a 100-day free trial, so you can see if you love them as much as we do. That's vivobarefoot.com, vivobarefoot.com/darkhorse.
And finally, this episode is sponsored by Four Sigmatic, a wellness company known for its delicious mushroom coffee, as well as protein powders that contain mushrooms. Weird? Yep. Delicious? Also yes. I'm having some right now in this beautiful mug that was handcrafted for us by a fan of DarkHorse. Four Sigmatic's mushroom coffee contains organic, fair trade, single origin Arabica coffee with both lion's mane and chaga mushrooms. Four Sigmatic's ground mushroom coffee with lion's mane adds a little something, some crispness and focus. It's delicious, just like your favorite coffee, dark and nutty. And the protein powders, which I did not think I was going to be at all interested in, because in general, that's not the way I go. I find added to a smoothie or to banana bread, for instance. I made some banana bread yesterday and added a little bit. It punches up the protein a little, which is of value, and again gives a little something, a little Christmas and focus, and doesn't change the taste. But they also have protein powders that do have a flavor. So they've got this peanut butter protein powder, which I add to smoothies. I haven't done this in a little while, but with banana, honey, cacao nibs, peanut butter, and milk or dairy-free alternative if you like. And their peanut butter protein powder increases not just the protein, but the peanut buttery flavor, which is a good thing if that's what you're into. All Four Sigmatic products are organic, vegan, and gluten-free. Every batch is third-party lab tested to ensure its purity and safety, and they have a 100% money-back guarantee. Love every sip or get your money back. We've got an exclusive offer with Four Sigmatic, that's F-O-U-R, Sigmatic, on their best-selling mushroom coffee for DarkHorse listeners. Get up to 40% off and free shipping on mushroom coffee bundles. To claim this deal, go to foursigmatic.com/darkhorse. That is FOURSIGMATIC.com/darkhorse. Fuel your productivity and creativity with some delicious mushroom coffee.
Now, you said cacao nibs, which is indeed how we say that, but you said banana bread, and we say bonanza bread. So what gives?
What gives? No one would know. Oh, you want me to add protein powder to my bonanza bread? Well, I've never had bonanza bread, therefore I don't need that product. That's what people would think.
I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, all right. Maybe you made the right call, but still.
Maybe if an apology is if it turns out that I believe an apology is in order to you, the family, the bonanza bread enthusiasts everywhere, I will come back and provide one.
Bonanza bread industry.
There's not one of those.
Oh.
Yeah.
Sort of a shame.
Nor will I apologize to the apparently nascent, if it exists at all, bonanza bread industry.
Big bonanza.
Little bonanza yet.
All right.
All right. Okay, let's see. It is, wow, it's already 8:30 here on the West Coast. Last week in our Q&A, we were asked this question. Quote, I teach college English in prison. A student asked for a list of 12 books he ought to read over winter break that I thought were important. What would your respective answers be? And this is the sort of assignment that I do actually enjoy. It's tough, of course, because what renders something important? And so I ended up scanning our bookshelves and really only held myself to one standard, which was I have to have read it. I know there are books on our bookshelves that I know to be important and that I've read parts of or not at all, and none of those are on this list. Many people familiar with DarkHorse will recognize many of these. I think I've talked about almost all of them at some point. And I've also, on my Patreon, I have some book lists. I've got a list from November 20th on my Patreon of 25 books that I themed history and resistance. And at the year marker of DarkHorse in March of 2021, I went back through and talked a little bit about all the books I had read from, which was another 24, 25. But really, what ended up, how things ended up on this book is if it felt a little bit apropos to right now. And there are too many amazing books that don't show up here. But But well, I have them here. I have this pile of 12 books, and I will show you. But first, I'm actually going to read a little bit from a book that I thought I was going to put on the list, but I decided not to because I didn't think that it didn't quite live up to the promise. But there's something early on that I wanted to share. So this is it's a good book. It's Elaine Scarry's Thinking in an Emergency, and I reread much of it this week, and I find the kinds of emergencies that she is talking about thinking in much more localized than I was hoping for. Things like, well, her first main example of 4 is, for instance, CPR, and how CPR has spread throughout the world, and how individuals end up knowing how to do it, which is important, but not exactly apropos for right now. However, she says, let me see if I find this. Just 2 things early on. All along, the people of the United States have had the legal procedures to prevent this from happening. Exterminating another population, that is. Why didn't we use them? We still have those legal procedures. Why don't we use them now? The existence of nuclear weapons endangers all the populations of the world. They are truly what in earlier centuries was meant by the legal principle quod omnis tangit, that which touches all. That sentence has a second half, and I'm sure I'm butchering the Latin here. Quod omnis tangit ab omnibus decidetur. That which touches all requires everyone's agreement. So this is an important legal principle that I had not seen in the Latin before, anyway. And one more point from Elaine Scarry's book is she's talking about Artaud's writing on Thucydides, and says that, I think this is Artaud understanding what Thucydides was saying, is that the goal of the emergency spectacle is to bring about a genuine enslavement of the attention. And I don't know that we can say that that is universally the goal, but that it certainly serves those who would turn an emergency spectacle into something for their own ends. That once you can grab a population's attention with a spectacle that may or may not be an emergency, the likes of which you're being told it is, then you can do a whole lot with that individual or that population that you could not previously do. And so in service of that, the first of the 12 books, and you just jump in whenever you want. You don't even know the books that I'm...
No, I don't. I'm curious.
Yeah. The first, I have them upside down for some reason. Okay, here we go. The first of the 12 books, stuck on my scarf, speaking of attention, is The World Beyond Your Head, on Becoming an Individual in the Age of Distraction. This is Matthew Crawford, a terrific author who I've mentioned many times here before. And in this book, he talks about getting our attention back from those forces that would have it as perhaps the most salient and actionable thing that we can do to bring back a sense of coherence.
Yeah, he's a lovely human being too, and there's something about the deliberate consciousness that is, I think, very consistent with the way you and I see things. If you're living in a novel era, basically your conscious mind is the mechanism you need to navigate with, and anyway, a lot of us don't, and a lot of us, our conscious minds are occupied with mundane stuff, which also happens to be novel, but isn't worthy of them. But
exactly. The second book on my list of 12 important books is Oliver Sacks, An Anthropologist on Mars. Now, this is he's unfortunately dead now, a few years, and this is one of his early books. Actually, it's not that early, from 1995. Maybe my favorite among his. I've read almost all of his work. He was I want to say a neuroscientist, and also effectively sort of a clinical psychologist, although I'm not sure exactly, I don't remember exactly how he described himself. But in this book, he takes on, basically he describes 7 of his patients as effectively case histories, and what has gone wrong in their brains such that they are seeing the world in a totally unusual way, and in some cases what that opens up for them and what doors it closes down. And so just taken in through this extraordinarily brilliant and compassionate man's eyes to try to see the world in a way that almost none of us have ever seen it in 7 different ways, really can provide a sense of the other that so many people are actually failing to try to do at the moment, I think.
Sachs is the doctor who is depicted in the movie, I think it's also a book, Awakenings,
Yes.
played by Robin Williams so brilliantly in that film, where Sachs literally awakened a bunch of patients who had locked-in syndrome, and he used L-Dopa to break them out. Unfortunately, only temporarily. But anyway, it's the same sort of approach where, you know, a doctor does good doctoring, where they experiment till they get to something that works for patients. And anyway, I agree. Anthropologist on Mars is a brilliant book, as is, I thought, Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, third, and these are not ranked; they're sort of ordered-ish, but this is not a ranked list. Weapons. Oh, I took the cover off that. You can't. Weapons of Mass Instruction by John Taylor Gatto. This man, also recently dead, was a first-class, world-class educator. Who spent, 30, 40 years something, teaching in the New York City public schools, won awards for being such an extraordinary teacher, was not simply, a good teacher on the page. Students adored him, and he was recognized as an excellent teacher. And then at some point, he decided that it was necessary for him to stand up against what he saw as the denigration of education and therefore of students. That is so widespread at this point in what he correctly calls compulsory schooling, which is the model that we live under. So also, I have learned from everything I've read of Gatto's, but this weapons of mass instruction is particularly impactful. 4, and again, all of these I think have something to teach us in the current moment. 4, Mother Nature. Maternal Instincts and How They Shape the Human Species. Now, that's a different subtitle than was originally published. This is Sarah Blaffer Hrdy. This is basically a book that I used to use as a way to seminar on with my students, as a way to introduce students to evolutionary biology with regard to humans. We would start with Dawkins' The Selfish Gene, and then we would work through this book and over several weeks. And A, she's brilliant. And B, she's a great writer and a great storyteller. And it also does at that point, this was written in the 90s, and I was, teaching started teaching with this in like 2003 or 4. It was somewhat unusual in being, being told often from the perspective of what are the females in the situation, getting from this, what's the angle, as opposed to, the relatively male biased ways that such scientific stories have been written in the past. Enough so that I actually early on in teaching animal behavior had a couple of students ask me why evolutionary biology was so biased towards females, which is a totally laughable proposition. Yep. But it made me sort of appreciate the book even more, and also appreciate my own biases. Like I didn't pick it because of all of that, but I thought, oh, then she has successfully done in this book what so many people have successfully done before, but from the other perspective. And it reveals that you can tell true scientific stories, and the stories that you choose to tell are going to reflect your biases, but that shouldn't affect what the stories actually are.
Yeah, and it's really, there's no reason for the bias, right? The bias is completely a historical artifact. I should also just point out that Sarah Blaffer Hrdy comes from the same evolutionary tradition that we do. She is a fellow student of Bob Trivers. And so anyway, if you like our style of reasoning, you're very likely to like hers.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, she was an undergrad at Harvard when he was a graduate student there. So she was his student early on, like when he was writing the very important papers he was writing. And then we were his students later on when he was a professor at UC Santa Cruz. Okay, number 5, Chandler Burr's The Emperor of Scent, a true story of perfume and obsession. What? Like, why would that be important? This is another book that I used to teach with a lot, and so did you. You can see it, very well book darted, as most of these are. This book is, again, brilliantly written, but it also reveals the ways that modern science fail us. And it tells the story of Luca Turin, who is an extraordinary scientist who has, it seems like, figured out how smell works. And that seems like something that probably we should have figured out a long time ago. But no, there's a lot that we don't yet know in science. And he seems to have figured it out. And he has not only not been recognized for it, but been actively shut out of many of the conversations where he should have been present, in part because this is too simplistic, but in part because he's too much of a generalist. Because he does physics and he does biology and he does chemistry and he does all of it, and he can talk across all of these boundaries. And frankly, those who are specially trained and are only specialists find that kind of capacity, frankly, very intimidating, and they try to shut it down.
Well, I would add something to that. Mm-hmm. The problem, I think, is a generalist takes a toolkit and walks into a puzzle and says, well, what makes sense here in light of what the evidence is? And that is very different than the process of picking up the school of thought that owns the field, right? And so the school of thought that owns the olfactory perception field is shapeism, which is the very logical idea that we smell things based on the fact that a molecule that has a particular shape finds a receptor with the inverse shape. They bind, it sends a message to the brain. It all makes perfect sense, right? Except that it doesn't make sense at all because the system is capable of smelling a infinite diversity of things instantaneously. And ordinarily, with every other system, in fact, you have to choose between these things. You can recognize an infinite diversity of things the way our immune systems do, but it takes time to develop the immunity. Or you can smell things instantaneously or perceive things instantaneously, but it's a limited library. So how do you get the two happening simultaneously here?
This is such an important point. You can have it all, but it'll take time, or you can have a subset right now. You can't have both.
You can't have both.
Yeah.
And so anyway, a generalist walks in and says something about this story doesn't add up. Whereas if you were schooled by the experts, what they've done is shown you all of the wonderful evidence in the direction of shapeism, and they haven't shown you the evidence that tells them that they don't know the whole story. And so anyway, he is effectively persona non grata in the mainstream. On the other hand, he's got a model that's a hell of a lot more predictive than the model that they've got.
Although the caricature of it, you've got an oscilloscope in your nose, does sound laughable.
It sounds laughable. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, prediction is the coin of the realm. So anyway, it's a wonderful book. It does show exactly how fields get stuck by a school of thought owning them. It also will cause you to give a damn about perfume and smells in a way that you never have before. In fact, when I've taught from this book, I know you've had the same experience. Students become so interested in smelling things and then trying to characterize them that they will go into burly dudes will go into perfume stores and start smelling stuff to see if they can figure it out. Anyway, yeah. It is a great book.
Yeah, it is. And Chandler Burr, who's written is an extraordinary writer as well. I will say, I wish. Actually, I don't remember exactly when this book was written. I think it had not been yet, 2002. I had the lovely experience of spending a week in Egypt with my parents back in the mid-90s, so before this book was written, and we spent a little bit of time in some of those perfume stores that in fact Luca Turin has spent time in, sourcing some of the really amazing fragrances. And I wish I could have those experiences again,
right,
with the knowledge in this book in my head.
Oh, we should also say that Luca Turin is an extremely, I've forgotten the name of the person who specializes in scent production, and he's written several world famous guides to perfumes, and
we've actually read from a few from that once
as well. They're marvelous, and they're especially good when he dislikes a fragrance, when he pans a fragrance and he explains this powdery affair,
Exactly. Yeah, he and his partner, whose name I've forgotten at the moment, but have written a couple of perfume guides that are exquisite. And you don't have to care about the perfumes themselves, or know them at all, or have any any familiarity with the history of perfumery, which neither of us do, but they're hilarious. Okay, number 6 on this list of 12 important books is, again, I've taken off the jacket, Jerry Muller's The Tyranny of Metrics. This is a short book, really, and this is relatively recent, 2018. I read this first as we were working on Hunter-Gatherer's Guide to the 21st Century, and it fit as so many, we have talked about concepts being obvious in retrospect, many evolutionary concepts being obvious in retrospect, which in fact we considered as an alternate title for The Hunter-Gatherer's Guide to the 21st Century. So much of what is true or is logically robust in evolutionary biology, once you hear it, it's actually hard to put yourself back in the position of not knowing it. It feels so obvious. Things just fit into place. The epicycles vanish, and
including Darwinism itself.
Including Darwinism itself, exactly. And so but there is more to know. All right. And so I think with regard to Darwinism, you'll have, for instance, a lot of people in biology who aren't evolutionary biologists say, well, yeah, of course,
right.
Of
a whole
course,
field
evolution
that can be summed up in a paragraph.
Right. Well, and not just that they may be like wondering what it is that we're doing over here, but that they haven't actually tracked the logical implications of what it is into their own work. And anyway, I feel like this entire book it's again short but brilliantly researched, and he's got the tyranny of metrics applied across colleges, schools, medicine, policing, the military, business and finance, philanthropy, and foreign aid. And it is so important for an understanding of one of the big problems that we point out a lot, excuse me, is the reductionism that replaces a holistic scientific thinking, and which many people who either wear the mantle of science or think that they are speaking on behalf of science mistake metrics for understanding. And that is really the thesis of the book, but with a tremendous amount of evidence.
And once you get it, it'll make you 19% smarter.
Yeah. Okay, six more books. It's finite though. You see, I don't just.
Yeah.
I'm not.
You're not.
I could keep going, but I'm not.
Yep.
I've only got a pile of 6 more here. Okay, number 7. Probably saw this one coming. Bad Pharma: How Drug Companies Mislead Doctors and Harm Patients, by Ben Goldacre. We've talked about this before a little bit, and it's just really important. And frankly, the title says most of it, except that this is not a short book, and it's extraordinarily well researched. And there's a lot here to learn from with regard to what standard operating practice as of 2012, which is when the first edition of this book came out, was in the relationship between pharmaceutical companies and doctors, and also research, both academic and industry.
Yeah, I would recommend actually people check out a TED Talk by the author called "What Doctors Don't Know About the Drugs They Prescribe." It is quite good. He's an excellent speaker as well. I do wonder where he is in the pandemic. I find it shocking that somebody who knows as much about pharma's corruption of medicine is missing how much corruption is shaping our response to this. And anyway, I hope he arrives soon.
Yeah. Number 8 on the list: Anatomy of an Epidemic: Magic Bullets, Psychiatric Drugs, and the Astonishing Rise of Mental Illness in America, by Robert Whitaker. Again, extraordinary, terrifying, brilliantly researched. Here's just one thing from it. Actually, sure if this is going to show, because I've only got the hard copy here. Here we have, I've got it book darted twice. It's funny. Long-term recovery rates for schizophrenic patients. 2-year follow-up through 15-year follow-up. The y-axis is 0 to 50%. And for those of you who, let's see if I can, oh wait, there, there's my camera. For those of you just listening, and now I'm just going from memory because I can't see the thing anymore. Basically, those who are off antipsychotics have a much higher rate of recovery from schizophrenia than those who are on antipsychotics. That the people who are on antipsychotics have a recovery rate in the 5 to 10% range from schizophrenia, and those who are off antipsychotics have a recovery rate in the 40 to 45% range. So that, that in a nutshell is the kind of result and then analysis that he's doing in this book. And it's terrifying.
I would point out this stands to reason, right? Your brain and the mind phenomenon that it creates are a tool, a means to an end, and to the extent that they are malfunctioning, that's bad for the creature. And so they are built to self-correct. Lots of things about us are built to self-correct. And if your instinct is to medicate something, right, that's your response, then the point is what you do is you remove the ability for the system to detect what's wrong and to repair. And so and something you didn't mention here, and we've talked about it before, I think, on the podcast, is that in other parts of the world, people who have a schizophrenic break often recover, right? They have one. They don't, it's not that they're schizophrenic, it's that they had an episode and it goes away. And so there's a question, and anytime you see a pattern like that, the question is, well, what are we doing that's messing that up?
Yeah.
Right? Obviously that's something that we should be seeking.
Yeah.
It might even, if you knew why that was distinct, you might even be able to eliminate the problem altogether. And in fact, we propose something in our book. Let's not go into it now, but anyway, there may well, it's clearly, at least largely, a novelty problem, and that means the solution, at least for people who haven't yet come down with it, is likely recognizing what the novel influence is and corralling it.
Yeah, the way you said that made me think, all this language policing that is happening, especially in the woke world, around, what it is that you call people. And, you can't say a fat person, you have to say a person of fatness.
I don't think that's the one.
A person of obesity. No, actually, like a person of size. Like, believe me, there are stupid ways that you're supposed to say it, and you're not supposed to.
Oh, I know there are stupid ways.
You're not supposed to adjectivize, right? And black person, fat person, gay person, right? Like, this is actually, I'm not sure we're ever told not to do this with the LGBTQ thing, which is always interesting, the inconsistencies in the policing and the the framework that we're supposed to be adopting. But there is, as with so many of these things, at base something real to talk about and something real to consider. That if in the rest of the world, without our modern pharmaceutical interventions around at least mental illness like schizophrenia, people aren't schizophrenic for life. They tend to have a schizophrenic episode. Then presumably people aren't understood as schizophrenics, 10 years after that one episode that they had. And so training ourselves to understand these things that we are currently doing or experiencing or are happening to us, and therefore feel like the entirety of our experience, as temporary things that are in a way, passing through us, or we're passing through the time period where they are us, can be a way to escape from what seems like the permanence of, whatever hell you may think you're experiencing at the moment.
Yeah.
Right? Like I'm a depressed person. You're experiencing a depressive episode right now, and let's get you out of that. But this too shall pass.
Yeah, unless you rush to medicate it, so the system does not have a calibration
precisely
to get you out.
Yeah, actually, that's thank you, because that's actually where I was going. That I think the tyranny of metrics and then the perverse incentives of the companies that make money from keeping people medicated for life creates a world in which it is all too easy to see ourselves as patients, as consumers, as schizophrenics or depressives, or whatever it is that your diagnosis is. And you're not your diagnosis. You're many, many more things than that.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't identify as a consumer, for sure.
There's something, obviously there are good doctors out there, but there's something about, maybe it is even the reward structure for a doctor, where when they are able to give you something. They're able to identify the condition and give you something that gives you relief or causes the problem to go away.
Yeah.
You're right. They've done their job. Whereas, let's compare, okay, they give you a drug that solves some problem you've got, right? That's a very aggressive intervention. Whereas advising you that you're probably vitamin D deficient during the winter and should probably supplement, you'll never know the things that you've been saved from, right? Because you just simply won't come down with them. And so it doesn't strike you, oh my God, that doctor's great. He saved me, 3 colds this winter, right? You don't feel that. It's not the same thing. And so, if you think about medicine as some kind of analog for our online environment where you're induced to do things by a dopamine reward, doctors are also apes that are driven by dopamine rewards, and the rewards are not well structured to result in the best medical treatment, which is, I'm sure, one contributor to the reason that there's so much bad medicine.
Yes. Oh, that's brilliant. Yes. Okay. 2 books of a slightly different sort, both of which we've talked about on here. Again, I've taken off the book jacket, but Live Not by Lies by Hrdy, which we spent almost an entire episode on a while back. The subtitle is A Manual for Christian Dissidents, and this is written just in 2020. It came out, I think, last summer, which is when we talked about it, and it really describes, again, somewhat terrifyingly, and in terrific detail, with stories from people who have lived through totalitarian regimes and who actually do this. This is one of the few places where I at least have seen the description of what it feels like as it comes on. So this is a very important book, and it's of course named for the Solzhenitsyn essay of the same name, which is also terrific and highly recommended and findable online. So Live Not by Lies, Solzhenitsyn essay, originally from, I guess, mid-20th century, and then Hrdy's book in 2020 of the same name.
Yeah, it is. It's obviously a moment that we should be reading the 5 or 6, maybe it's 10 or 12 good things on this topic, because obviously most people are missing what's taking place right in front of them, and we're having stupid arguments about whether it's even happening.
Right. And I didn't put on the book. I haven't reread actually 1984 and Brave New World and Catch-22, all of which we've talked about here, but I haven't reread them recently enough to have put them here, or actually the Gulag Archipelago by Solzhenitsyn, which I read my first quarter in college. I think does this, brilliantly as well, but there's a lot not on this list.
Right.
All right. However, this is one that is Eric Hoffer, The True Believer. Thoughts on the nature of mass movements. So just in light of conversations about mass formation and such, Eric Hoffer, this is from mid 20th century, 1951, does a fantastic job of describing what it looks like from the outside and to some degree on the inside. So here are just 2 very brief quotes from Hoffer, again written over half a century ago. Whence come the fanatics, he asks. Mostly from the ranks of the non-creative men of words. The most significant division between men of words is between those who can find fulfillment in creative work and those who cannot. I'll read just 2 more sentences here. The creative man of words, no matter how bitterly he may criticize and deride the existing order, is actually attached to the present. His passion is to reform and not to destroy. So he finds, and I think he's right, that so much, and again, he's talking about fanatics in the mid-20th century, are people who are literate, people of letters, people in the so-called intellectual class, the lettered class, perhaps the elite, you might call them, but who don't actually have much original to offer. And so they become more easily attracted to and perhaps indebted to fanaticism.
Well, it's actually a corollary of what you and I talk about with respect to the importance of education, including interaction with physical systems in that you can't fool, that are not
Yes.
socially mediated.
Yes.
And so we do find all sorts of people who are very learned in some way, some book way, but it is not tested against reality. These people can become extremely enamored of ideas that are terrible because they don't spot why they're terrible. And I will say, I think the inverse is true, that in general, if you meet somebody, you know, there are people who work with their hands badly, but they don't tend to stick with it. People who have a tradition of working with their hands tend to be very down to earth, because the thing is, if you're not down to earth and you're doing some physical thing, then you're constantly frustrated because it doesn't work. And so you have to sort of accept, you know, its authority. You have to accept the authority of the physical world over whatever you're trying to do. And that I wonder if it doesn't just make you a better, less dangerous human being.
That's fascinating. I've never thought to frame it in those terms that you just did. You have to respect the authority of the thing that you are working with, the physical system that is giving you feedback. And that helps you learn not to follow false authority, actually. Because you recognize, you come to understand what real authority is in the form of, you know, gravity, or, you know, forces from a saw, or the, you know, chemical leavening agents in a cake, you know, and there's just no negotiating with them.
Yeah, actually, I had an interesting one yesterday. I have first in my lifetime physical experience that taught me what I was misunderstanding. We have this power washer, and Toby had used it to power wash something for us.
Toby, who was 15.
He's 15.
Strapping young man.
And he had put the hose on it, the pressure side hose, right? And I went to take it off to put the thing away, and I could not dislodge the thing. I got to the point of using wrenches. I still couldn't dislodge.
Nor could he.
Right. Nobody could.
Nor could anyone in the family.
And so, I mean, I didn't think he was especially likely to have put it on that. I mean, you know, if he'd put it on too tight, right, and nobody could get it off by hand, surely a wrench would do it. But no, this thing was on there like nothing I've ever. And it turned out when I finally dislodged it, that the thing was still pressurized. That the hose was still pressurized and full of water, so it was pushing the threads against each other in such a way that they were basically, probably they had galled together, right? Yeah, that's the term.
I actually don't recognize that term. Galled is what you said?
Yeah, I reserve the right to discover 5 minutes after the podcast is over that I've forgotten the right term, but I believe galling, when you take two, like let's say you have a nut and a bolt of the same metal, right, and you screw them together very tightly. Well, if you screw them together... And
they're appropriate for each other. They've got the right threads.
Correct threads. But if you screw them together really tightly, what happens is the two objects are put so close together that some of the molecules sort of forget whether they're nut or bolt. And so basically they weld, right? And so it's very hard to break them free. And there are various things you can do. You can put a thin film of something in there, grease or whatever. But anyway, the pressure in this system made what went on by hand impossible to remove by wrench.
Well, he and I did get our comeuppance because we were standing rather too close at the point you finally got it free.
Yeah, it was really something.
Yes. Luckily, it was already pouring out, so we were already somewhat damp.
I learned we all survived.
Yes, we sure did.
Yeah.
Okay, number 11 on this book, and there are some other things we want to talk about today, but this is, of course, taking a while, is something probably no one's going to be expecting, is Tom Wolfe's The Right Stuff. This is just such a terrific book to explore what is possible and what is, what people who have something they want to accomplish in the world and are driven to do it no matter what some other people think the value is can do. And it's just it's of course brilliantly written. Again, Tom Wolfe recently died as well, I think.
Did he?
Oh God, maybe he didn't.
Maybe he didn't.
Okay, I'll figure that out.
Tom, please take care of yourself if you're still alive. Well, I don't know. I'm trying to wish him well, but I'm not absolutely certain. I might have missed, the news that he's gone, but I don't know that he's gone.
Zach, if you have the ability to figure out that would be fabulous. Okay. But
And actually, if you can get him on the phone, just put him through.
Yeah. Terrific. I don't have much more to say about this, but when my eyes fell onto this on my shelf, I thought this belongs on a list of important books that are relevant for the moment to give people hope, actually, about what we can be, what extraordinary things people can do.
And he is no longer alive.
He
is no longer alive.
Yeah.
All right.
We didn't do that, did we, Zach?
I mean, it would have been 2018 apparently.
Okay.
And then finally, the 12th book on this list of important books is Sebastian Junger's Tribe on Homecoming and Belonging, a book that I've read from before. Utterly brilliant and short. I was going to say utterly short, which is not, that short doesn't really go with utterly, but I have a very short excerpt to read from this. Contempt is often directed at people who have been excluded from a group or declared unworthy of its benefits. Contempt is often used by governments to provide rhetorical cover for torture or abuse. Contempt is one of 4 behaviors that, statistically, can predict divorce in married couples. People who speak with contempt for one another will probably not remain united for long. The most alarming rhetoric comes out of the dispute between liberals and conservatives, and it's a dangerous waste of time because they're both right. The perennial conservative concern about high taxes supporting a non-working underclass has entirely legitimate roots in our evolutionary past and shouldn't be dismissed out of hand. Early hominids lived a precarious existence where freeloaders were a direct threat to survival, and so they developed an exceedingly acute sense of whether they were being taken advantage of by members of their own group. But by the same token, one of the hallmarks of early human society was the emergence of a culture of compassion that cared for the ill, the elderly, the wounded, and the unlucky. In today's terms, that is a common liberal concern that also has to be taken into account. Those two driving forces have coexisted for hundreds of thousands of years in human society and have been duly codified in this country as a 2-party political system. The eternal argument over so-called entitlement programs, and more broadly over liberal and conservative thought, will never be resolved because each side represents an ancient and absolutely essential component of our evolutionary past. So how do you unify a secure, wealthy country that has sunk into a zero-sum political game with itself? How do you make veterans feel that they are returning to a cohesive society that was worth fighting for in the first place? I put that question to Rachel Yehuda of Mount Sinai Hospital in New York City. Yehuda has seen up close the effect of such antisocial divisions on traumatized vets. Quote, "If you want to make a society work, then you don't keep underscoring the places where you're different. You underscore your shared humanity," she told me. "I'm appalled by how much people focus on differences. Why are you focusing on how different you are from one another and not on the things that unite us?"
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
That's square on. And I would just say the other thing is don't let people emphasize your differences, because that's what's happening. There's a reason that we are divided at the razor's edge, and we now have routine photo finish elections, and that is not about some organic phenomenon. That is about our division being necessary to whatever it is that is governing us continuing to do what it does without having to pay too much attention to what we need or want.
Exactly right. And to the degree that Junger has accurately described some of the fundamental positions of liberals versus conservatives, and I think he has, so much of what the Democrats and the Republicans currently represent has very little to do with those things. And you know, we as having been lifelong Democrats are more attuned to the changes in the Democratic Party, but certainly it has strayed very, very, very far from its traditional, its historic values.
Well, I would say, I mean, you know, it's interesting because we spend so much time now interacting with honorable conservatives that I have to go back and look at what I used to think about Republicans and say, did I have it right? And have things changed? Did I have it wrong? And it's a mixture, but but I have thought.
But also with regard to the Democratic Party itself. Is that
right?
Yeah.
So it used to be a division between more or less management and labor. Right. And the Democrats represented labor. And with Clinton, they became direct competitors with the Republicans, and they competed over management, and they abandoned labor.
Yeah.
And so the point is, in my opinion, the Republican Party was more corrupt because it was more closely aligned with capital. Not that the unions weren't corrupt, because they were, but
Right.
but nonetheless, because it was the C-suite, the
Yep.
corruption was direct, and then the Democrats took over the model, and they basically set up their own racket. And
Mhm.
now I think in some ways, maybe in many ways, they have exceeded the Republicans in their corruption. And so, I do have to sort of go back decades and think, actually, Democrats have not been very good at representing labor in a very, very long time. But labor is at least a natural entity that does encompass most of us.
Yes.
And it's been a long time since I've seen the Democratic Party give any thought to those people.
Yes. Actually, this is a good segue, if we might, into this. Oh, hold on. No, I'm looking for the piece published in The Hill this week. Here, you can show my screen here, Zach. Hat tip to Tim Pool, who tweeted this. The headline is, "Biden is delivering the fastest economic recovery in history. Why hasn't anyone noticed?" And it proceeds with a whole bunch. Here, you can give me my screen back here. A whole bunch of claims that seem suspect, although I didn't go through and try to track them down. And certainly the idea that we are living through the best time in economic history of the United States would seem to be false on its face in a lot of regards. But just assume for a moment the headline is accurate, that we accept the premise of the piece and that the numbers therein. Like I said, I don't accept the premise and I don't accept the numbers, but okay. We are led to this remarkable statement in the inside of this article. Quote, "Democrats' biggest problem, a conservative media machine pumping out economic disinformation on a 24/7 production schedule."
Really?
So, if the Democrats really believe, now this is not the Democrats saying this, but this is the Hill reporting on what they see as the Democrats' biggest problem. If they really believe that their biggest problem is the conservative media machine, that's entirely outside of them. This is victim culture at the political level. This is like, oh, woe is me. Everyone does this stuff to me. If only you guys would leave me alone, then I could do the amazing, honorable stuff that I've always been trying to do. Like, if the DNC truly believes that their biggest problem is external to them, then it will fail, that it is doomed. I was going to say we are doomed, but no, it is doomed, because that's hogwash.
Yeah. Boy, I love the idea that the DNC might be doomed. That would be marvelous.
Well, I mean, it's also, oh man, the Democrats' current mode of like propaganda and censorship, and frankly, taking on the mantle of Enlightenment values in this caricature-y way, like I am science, right? And then making pronouncements that are unscientific and unverifiable and unfalsifiable too. I think that's that thing that I just said, the censorship and the abandonment and the transformation of Enlightenment values to serve their own petty ends or non-petty ends. Like that's their biggest problem. Or there's a bunch of other things beyond the external media. I mean, and also how much of the media is being fed by what the DNC wants?
Right. I mean, no, it's preposterous, right?
Right.
The conservative media machine is arguably Fox, right?
Right.
But then there is a much bigger machine that leans in the other direction. So what the hell,
Yeah.
right?
Fox, a few newspapers, I guess, but
Yep.
let's see. Like MSNBC, I wanted to say the CDC, that's CNN, basically all the other networks,
Right.
NPR, New York Times, WAPO, almost everything, as we know, this bias.
Let's put it this way.
This bias in the other direction then is being claimed as the Democrats' biggest problem.
In order for that to be an explanation, it would have to be the larger force. And given that the conservative media machine is the smaller force, that's not a very good explanation.
Yeah, it's really not. But I mean, I think we should come to expect not very good explanations from the Democrats at this point. Yeah. So, I guess given that this feels very much to me like the sort of victim culture that is that has been very much the rage on college campuses of, don't put anything in front of me that I might be alarmed by, that might have my feelings hurt. Anything that goes wrong is about me having been victimized, as opposed, I never should, take any control of my own life. I would say to individuals who actually buy this, including the DNC perhaps, take some responsibility for your damn self. Get a grip. Like, wake the fuck up and do some things that are actually good for the people in the country and stop lying to us. Like, that's a start. Maybe one of your biggest problems is that you're lying to us too much. And are the Republicans also lying to us? I'm sure, of course. Like, that's what politicians do. But it seems to have become one of the planks in the platform.
I don't know. I don't think the point is, even to expect them to lie to us less or do something good is to misunderstand what they do. The business model, they're not supposed to have a business model, but they do have a business model, and it has to do with their real constituents, which are not the people, right? So I don't even know, I don't know what the point of, it's like going to criminals and saying, less crime. You want us not to go after you, do less crime. And it's like, nope, criminals.
Well, I guess there are still some number of people, and I have no idea what fraction of voters in this country might believe that the Democrats' biggest problem is the Republican media machine. And I will say that again, as I mentioned last week, I walk around, I end up having short conversations with strangers, and I overhear conversations, some of whom are among people who I then interact with, and some of whom aren't. And and this is in deep blue Portland. This is in a city that routinely votes very, 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 very blue. And I overheard another conversation a little bit like the one I reported last week. This one between two elderly women, actually white-haired women at a coffee shop, who said Bob was hospitalized after getting his booster, and then they sort of look around, they got very, very quiet. And then the next thing I heard was, I'm not sure if I should cancel my appointment. I just don't think they're telling us the truth. This is in deep blue Portland among older women who are more likely than any other demographic by age or sex to listen to the authorities and to say, okay, you said I should, I will. Even in that group, we are seeing people experience with their own, in their own families and friend groups, actually, what I know is not a match for what I'm being told. And also, I have had 4 conversations in this last week in which people, without my prompting, said what we need is leadership. And I'm hearing this with regard to, again, in deep blue Portland, at the city level, at the state level, at the federal level, all of which in Oregon are currently blue leaders. Right. And so there are a whole lot of people who are, I think, to agree with you. We're saying, why, frankly, are we continuing to talk to the same people who continue to do the same thing? We need something different.
Well, in fact, they are handing the allegiance of the people to the Republicans.
Yes,
They're
are
handing it to them because,
yes.
in some sense,
yes.
the Democratic Party has started doing all kinds of things for reasons that serve constituents that we barely know.
Yes.
And all the Republicans have to do in order to actually be preferred is block terrible Democratic ideas. And this, it doesn't have to be this way. The fact is, there's a mystery, just as there is a mystery why it is no colleges and universities that are resisting wokeness when obviously a huge number of people want one, why there aren't social media platforms that are wildly popular that don't censor all of these things. In the same sense, a party that actually served the interests of the people would be wildly popular, right? For obvious reasons. And yet the point is we're forced to choose between corporatist parties, and that tells you what the game is.
It does. And yes, it does. Right. Well,
No, including admin.
yeah.
So, including that's factored in the over an hour content.
So Zach says we're an hour. I saw us start at 8:30 when we were through with the ads. So we've got another 10 minutes or so. There is at least one more thing that I want to talk about here. I don't know where you might want to go. We will move from that. No, I've lost it. Here we go. Last week you talked a little bit about Omicron, the new variant that we are all supposed to be quite terrified of. There is, we've been involved in some conversations about what it is, what it means, what it actually we've talked about for the last 2 weeks, I guess. And it's hard to find real data, right? It's hard to find actual information. And the Oregon Health Authority, which I get missives from, as I have mentioned several times on this show, came to the fucking rescue this week.
Awesome.
With everything you ever wanted to know about the Omicron variant. So I'm going to put this up. I'm going to have you, not quite yet, Zach, but I'm going to have you put it up on my screen just briefly, and then take it down while I read to you guys what I learned from the Oregon Health Authority this week about Omicron. So here it is. Omicron, what we know about this new variant. All right. So as I don't want you guys getting ahead of me. It's 5 points. Color coded. I don't know what the colors mean though. So maybe it's not color coded. 5 points. Omicron, what we know about this new variant. I was so eager to hear what the Oregon Health Authority.
Oh, totally. I mean, what do the data say?
What do the data say? 1. Viruses like SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19, mutate or change constantly. 2. All over the world, scientists are studying the Omicron variant. 3. We know how to protect ourselves and others against infection. Get vaccinated if you're eligible, a booster. Wear a mask in indoor public settings or outdoor crowded settings. Keep physical distance and wash hands frequently. 4. Oregon Health Authority is monitoring Omicron closely. And 5. And you can put my screen up now if you like, Zach. As we learn more, we will share information on how you can best protect yourself and keep your loved ones and your community safe. I mean, among other things, the Oregon Health Authority has revealed that they in fact know nothing about Omicron and have nothing to share and really shouldn't have put this into their missive because they have just further reduced the confidence that they know anything and have anything to offer. This may be, I mean, it's a low bar at this point, like for worst. I'm not sure I haven't reversed a sign there, but like, could this be the worst messaging we've seen so far? At least it's not misinformation. It's just no information.
No information.
It's informational.
It's completely empty. Well, it reminds me of the, I was just trying to find it, but the terror threat level color coding system, which was a very useful system, you'll recall, for avoiding.
So it's like after 9/11?
Yeah,
Okay.
after 9/11, the government, actually in conjunction with the Red Cross, put together a very informative resource about how you should respond to the different terror threat levels.
Is this going to be at the level of like duck and cover?
Well, it was, as I recall it,
Okay.
You had green through red, and green was there's no threat of terrorism, which I guess would be equivalent to the extinction of humanity, which would be the end of the threat of terrorism.
I mean,
but
you've seen like squirrels going after each other. I feel like squirrel terrorism is a possibility.
just world terror is a thing. I don't know about.
Oh, okay. Okay. You don't think it's organized? in the
Right.
same way?
No.
Okay.
But in any case,
So green is an unattainable goal.
green is an unattainable goal. So you sort of start at yellow, and yellow is like, well, terrorism is possible today. And yellow had some pretty useful stuff in it. You should probably have a plan, and you might want some supplies because things like that, right? And so, okay, that's good. I think
Have a plan
and
and supplies.
supply. Oh, and I think you were supposed to listen to authorities if they provided information on what you should do, right?
Yep.
And then every level on top of that basically just revisited the things they had already told you need to do, but with like greater urgency. Like definitely listen to authorities and things like that.
Make sure those supplies are still good.
Yeah, check your supply. Exactly. So it was just empty. There was nothing there. It was just completely emotional manipulation by color coding, right? No, it's not a green day.
I mean, I wonder that it speaks a little bit to this, the tyranny of metrics thing. There's except in that case, like the color coding, there's like an implied there's an implied ranking, right? So there is this, implication of quantitative thinking that has gone into it, and they're just not bothering us with the numbers. Don't worry about that. But all you have to do is like plug in to we've used numbers, and you get people to go along with it.
Yeah, no, well, but I think the point really is you're not. You know what it is? It's public policy where they forgot to replace the lorem ipsum.
Yes.
Somebody put together, all right, you know what we really need? We need a 5 points, what we know about Omicron, right? And
what
somebody
we know all over the world, scientists are studying
right.
the Omicron, which is literally the only, that's actually the most, two of them actually mention Omicron at all. The other one being Oregon Health Authority is monitoring Omicron.
But you can imagine, right? If you knew that there was 5 points you need to have about Omicron, and you just wanted to like rough some stuff in, and then you were going to come back later, and then you got distracted, and then somebody published it. Right, exactly. It would be that. And, that was the terror threat level, in which case we actually, I believe, discovered, the whole reason that it's not like terrorism has gone anywhere. When's the last time you saw a color code for where we are at threat level, right? They got rid of it because, everybody sort of understood it was a political manipulation tool designed to just sort of, amp your amygdala or whatever.
Right.
And so, okay, how many times are we going to fall for this crap, right? The pretense that there's information in there about Omicron.
Yep.
Even if it was 5 questions, here are 5 things to watch out for, things we'd like to know about Omicron, right? How virulent is it? That's a very important question, because this could be a great thing, right? If it's very mild symptom wise and produces lifelong immunity, it could save us from this vaccine madness and the insanity of our public health response, as we said several weeks ago.
Yep. Does Omicron, like Delta before it, seem to evade the vaccines? Interesting question.
Right. So you could say, here are some things to watch out for, but you can't say, here are the things you need to know, and then not say anything.
Yeah. No, exactly that. And man, there was something related to that, but maybe that's it. We knew we had to be pretty brief today, and then we had some technical problems. So maybe we're going to do a short show this week. We're going to take as brief a break as possible and come back with Q&A. We're going to start with a Discord question and then answer your questions when we come back. Anything else to say before we sign off?
Well, I think I want to add a couple things to the sign off, just based on where we seem to be in history. So Julian Assange lost his battle against extradition. That's not to say that it's the last round. There's an appeal that he has available to him, I believe. But nonetheless, this has gone on far too long. He's clearly a political prisoner, and I don't expect the Biden administration to even consider pardoning him, no matter how right a thing it would be to do, or to stop pursuing him even. Right. But I would say free Assange, bring Snowden home, and stand up. These mandates are immoral. The orders are immoral, and we know what to do. Standing up is what we are obligated to do. And so, for the moment, those 3 things. Free Assange, bring Snowden home,
and
stand up.
And in the meantime, be good to the ones you love, and eat good food and get outside.
Be well, everyone.